Chinese security forces were several times more than the number given by the Chinese state. And then the number of arrests are in tens of thousands.
Şu günü namayış bolğan günü 10 minglarca saqçılar, bironiklar qo'lida hech qanday qurol yo'q. Bir tinchlik bilan namoyish qilgan odamlarning orashiga xuddi ikki taraf urishayotgan urush holidagidek tashlandi.
Chinese government deployed all of its security forces. Tens of thousands of Chinese troops, soldiers, anti-riot forces using armored vehicles, not only running down the Uyghurs, but also did house-to-house search of all Uyghur houses.
Akşamdan başlap taң atqıç saat 3-4 kiche çıraqni bütün Ürümçinin içinde çıraqni öçürüp taşlap keçiçi avtomatning ovozi besiqmay chiqib gunohsiz xalqni ko'ch-ko'chiga namoyishchilarni so'lab qirg'in qildi.
The Chinese security forces in the evening of July 5th and early mornings of July 6th turned off the lights of the Uyghur neighborhoods and began to fire upon the Uyghurs who were running into the neighborhoods and busting into Uyghur houses, arresting Uyghur males.
Tiananmen vaqasida aşı yoshlarni qanday qirg'in bo'lsa tank bilan qang'imlab Uyghur xalqini ashundaq fojia bilan bostırdı.
The way the Chinese security forces handled the Uyghurs on that day is not any different than the Chinese security forces handled the peaceful Chinese students on June 4th at the Tiananmen Square when Chinese military forces burst into the square using tanks and armored vehicles, massacred the best and brightest of Chinese students.
Lekin axborotni qamal qilganligi uchun Uyghur xalqining qanchalik o'ldirilganligini biz aniq sanni elib dunyoga ma'lum qilolmadik. Qurol Xitoyning qo'lida, avtomat Xitoyning qo'lida, pul Xitoyning qo'lida, tashviqot Xitoyning qo'lida. Shundaq bo'lganligi uchun bizning xalqimizning tashviqoti qamal ostida qoldi.
After the July 5th massacre, the Chinese government immediately shut down both internet and the telecommunications in order to hide what has truly happened and in order to spin their version of the events. And the Chinese government have all the army, all the weapons, all the media, all the money to do their kind of propaganda and spin their version of the stories.
10 ay axborotning sirtiga chiqib ketmasligi uchun ko'mib o'ltirgan, tutib o'ltirgan, tirik tutib atgan yo'qab ketganlarning soni dunyoga chiqib ketmasligi uchun 10 ay internetni butunlay taqab tashladi. Dunyoda bunday ish yo'q. Hatto Xitoy xalqimi, Uyg'ur xalqimi, hukumatmi internetdan xabar ololmadi.
After the internet shutdown and information blockade initiated by the Chinese government, they were trying to prevent the real images and pictures of the protest and Chinese murder of Uyghurs to be on foreign websites. And as a result, they were also able to go after Uyghurs, house-to-house searches and sweeps in Uyghur neighborhoods, arresting tens of thousands of Uyghurs.
Bütün xalqning inkasida, hatto biz aşağıda ko'zi bilan ko'rganlarning inkasida, atdiganda saharda harbiylarning ko'chidagi qonlarni qanday yug'anligini bizga hozir oshkorlab atmoqda.
Many Uyghurs we interviewed state that on the morning of July the 6th, the Chinese security forces and as Chinese workers were able to watch the streets of certain areas of neighborhoods of Urumqi, the blood stains on the walls, on the ground, on the cement and everywhere, to make it look like as if not a big deal happened.
Hazır anlaşımızga qarıgan vaqtida biz ma'lumotni to'liq olamyapmiz. Necha 10 minglaga yosh Uyg'urlarning turmida ekanligini anglayapmiz. Shuningdan tartib Uyg'urlar har kuni gunohsiz studentlar, bo'libmi yosh bolalar har kuni tutqun qilyapti, har kuni tutib ketyapti.
And after that, the Chinese government detained, rounded up, arrested tens of thousands of Uyghurs in military warehouses, in Chinese prisons, and began to try and execute them in a very speedy fashion.
Hazırgacha muş 4 yıl içinde 36 adamni her yılı 4'ten 5'ten açıkıp 35'ten 20'den şunda yaş ballarını açıkıp sot kılıp aldığı 4'ten 5'ten ballarga ölüm cezası hüküm kılıp qağınını müddetli qamaq cezası hüküm kılıvatıdı. Bu siyasi mahbuslarının özü ihtiyari adukat kubul kılış, adukat arkalık özünü aklaş hukuku yok. Xitay hükümeti qiynaş arkalık nemin ihra kıldıysa şunu ihra kıldırıp olanı terörist degen töhmetler ölüm cezası hüküm kılıvatıdı.
And since July 5th, the Chinese government at least sentenced 36 Uyghurs to death. And these are all young Uyghur males. And these Uyghurs had no right to hire lawyers. Usually it's a government-appointed lawyer that chants government positions, and without much due process, they all had to sign forced confessions. Then the Chinese government used that as evidence of their crime, sentenced them to death, and many Uyghurs to life, and given long sentence. These are mostly young Uyghurs and students.
Şununla biz hazır muşu vakadan keyin Human Rights Watch Uyg'urlarning yo'qolib ketayotgan Uyg'urlar haqida 7 ayning 5idan keyin Uyg'urlarning ustiga tushgan fojia haqida report e'lon qildi aniqlab.
Soon after July 5th massacre, Human Rights Watch, one of the most prominent international watchdogs, issued an extensive report on the enforced disappearance of more than 40 Uyghurs by the Chinese security forces.
Yo'qolib ketgan Uyg'urlar butunlay yosh bola ekanligini aniqlab chiqdi.
And the report stated all of these disappeared Uyghurs by the Chinese security forces were young Uyghur males.
Endi biz yaqinda o'zimizning dunyo Uyg'ur qurultiyining aniqligini da hozir 20 necha Uyg'urni yo'qolib ketgan Uyg'urni topdik. Bu faqat bizning aniqlay olgan sonimiz. Chunki axborot kontrol qilinadi, ham biz urug'ni qoldirmi, balları yo'qolib ketganlarmi, o'zining bolasini yo'qolib ketdim deganlar turmaga ilinadi degan qo'rqitish bo'lganligi uchun ular oshkorlayolmaydi. Minglagan yana qanchiligan odamlarning yo'qolayotganligini uqmaymiz. Hozircha bizning aniqligimiz 20 necha adam.
And the World Uyghur Congress also produced a report by doing extensive investigation on the enforced disappearance of the Uyghur people. The report which we have here, this is a report which is available on the desk if you would like to have a copy, documents 23 cases of the Uyghur males, mostly males, disappeared after July 5th. Their whereabouts are still unknown at the moment. Their family members were threatened by the Chinese state not to seek their whereabouts or to petition the government or especially speak to foreign media. Those who tried to speak to foreign media, they were locked up, they were beaten up by plainclothes Chinese security police. So that's where the situation is now.
Bunundan başqa, yani bir necha ailening bolasini yo'qolib ketganligini biz aniqladik. O ailelarning bizga bergan inkasi bizni oshkorlasanglar, bolamizning yo'qolib ketganligini eshitsak, yana bir bolamizni tutib ketadi, bizni tutib ketadi, oshkorlamanglar deganligi uchun ularning tizimligini bunga kirgizmadik.
Actually, the number of disappeared by the Chinese state that we have found out are more than 23, but we did not include some of the Uyghur names here because the family members told us if you publish the names of our sons and the daughters who are disappeared by the Chinese state, then the Chinese state may come after us again. They're going to take our another son or daughter. So we are terrified of the Chinese state, and we're just happy we have another son who is still not in prison.
Biz hazır turmalarda qiynab öldürüp ballarını açık bergen ata-analardan aniqlasak, ular ballarımız öldü, kömbettik, biz onu başqısak, ailemiz boyunca kolgayıp ketip dep cevap verdi.
And some Uyghurs we interviewed whose sons and daughters basically either tortured to death in prison or later died soon after they were released. Then they had to bury them, but they basically said they can't even give up the names because if they do that, the Chinese government will punch them severely on releasing the information.
2008 yılı 1. ayının 18. günü sot başlığı özü ilan qilganda 18 ming adamni keyingi 5 yil ichida qo'lga oldik siyosiy mahbuslarni biz g'alaba qildik dedi. Sharq Turkistonda ash bechora qurolsiz, gunohsiz, oshunda xalqning ichida 18 ming bo'lguncha 18 ming terrorist bormi?
And in January of 2008, the Chief Justice of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Regional Government at the judicial conference, he proudly stated that in the past 5 years, the Xinjiang security authorities arrested, imprisoned more than 18,000 Uyghurs on endangering state security charges, and also said on terror charges. So the number to us at the time, that was pre-Olympic number, also pre the massacre number. It was a shocking number, even for the Uyghur people.
And onundaki olimpikte neçe minglap adamını kolga aldı. Onundaki 7. ayının 5'linki neçe minglap adamını kolga aldı. Endi adamlarımız, yaş balılarımız, bolup mu yaş balılarımız yokap ketip Bu ballar nemi degen çıraylık, nemi degen süyümlük, sebi balılar nemi degen çıraylık kızlar. Ular kini, ularının azayı setilip atamdı. Yaki turmalarda urup öldürüp tirik kömülüp atamdı. Xitay hükümetinin, Uyghur halkının yokap ketken perzentlerine cevap verişini ve Xitay hükümetinin Uyghurlarning tutkun kılgan ballarını koyup verişini. Vay, nimişki bunda kılımız bir aciz, bir biçare milletni özümüz bilen yaşap atkan degen sualını özüge koyuşunu ümit kılıman.
And the Chinese government initiated a life and a death struggle in East Turkestan and rounded up hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs right before and after Olympics, using Olympic security as an excuse. And I have just described what has happened on July 5th and thereafter, how the Chinese state were able to arrest and use enforced disappear so many of the Uyghurs. We are not sure why the Chinese government is not giving an account of the total number of the arrested Uyghurs and especially the disappeared Uyghurs. We wonder if the Chinese state killed them either in secret or tortured them to death or just sell their organs just for money.
Endi Uyghur halkımı tinç yaşashni xalaydı. Uyghur halkımı ittifaq yaşashni xalaydı. Nimişki şundaq şarayet bermedi? Nimiç uni Uyg'urlar mushundaq qarshi chiqyapti degan savolni Xitoy hukumati siyosatiga nimishki qo'ymaydi?
The Uyghur people want peace and stability, and the Uyghur people want their basic rights respected, but that's not the case. We wonder what the Chinese government wants with the Uyghurs.
Buna siz Uyg'urlarning turmudan qo'yib berish kerak.
So I demand the Chinese government to release the Uyghurs arrest after July the 5th.
Tutkun qilishni to'xtatish kerak.
Stop the further arrest of other Uyghurs.
Hal talab qilgan masalani hal qilish kerak.
Count the number of Uyghurs disappeared by enforcement.
Bizmi shu vaqtida bular bilan kelishim qilib yaxshi yashashni xohlaymiz. Jungo hukumati, Jungo xalqining dushmani emas, bizning dushmanimiz emas. Faqat biz qonun bo'yicha bizning haq huquqimizni bersin deb talab qildik. U menimi terrorist deb atadi. Mening bolarimni turmida. Nimish bunda qiladi?
So the Chinese government should treat the Uyghurs with respect their basic human rights, and also instead of accusing me as a terrorist, locking up my sons and relatives, and by silencing and persecuting Uyghurs, Chinese government will not able to achieve anything. The best thing is for the Chinese government to find a peaceful, negotiated settlement to the question of East Turkestan.
Xitoy hukumati Uyg'urlarni zo'ravonlikqa majburlamaslik kerak. Chekidan oshib ketgan bir zulm bir millatni zo'ravonlikqa majburlaydi.
And my last words, the Chinese government should not force Uyghurs to fight back. It is illegal occupation and illegitimate policies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, for your statement, for your refreshed, new, additional messages you are sending to this important conference and meeting.